Sports Talk Worldwide with some news from the world of boxing. So y'all know what time it is. You ain't in a rush to get concussed. Now let's talk about a little heavyweights, fights that would really move, the heavyweight division in the boxing world. We know that perennial contender, mandatory, very good fighter from Britain, is Dillian Whyte. He knows right under the echelon, the upper echelon of the top three heavyweights, the Anthony Joshuas, the Tyson Furies, and the Deontay Wilders of the world. Dillian Whyte's right there in that next group that we know are pretty good. Right, Dillian Whyte's lost twice. Knocked out by Anthony Joshua and Povetkin. He came back. Against Anthony Joshua, he lost because he was playing with one arm. Actually, he was boxing with one arm. The left arm I think was really hurt bad. And his fight against Povetkin, you got knocked out, not paying attention. Now, he's slated to want to fight in America, but now he's going to fight in England. He wanted to make a big splash in America, but now he's going to stay in England and fight. And he's looking to fight Chris Arreola. I don't know why. Chris Arreola has lost 7 fights. He's considered by some a bum because Deontay Wilder beat him with one arm, and he's lost a few fights. He did real well against Adam Kanauki. Him and Kanauki having the most punches thrown in a heavyweight fight ever. So he's not a bum, right? But they will call him that when he fights Deontay Wilder. And he just lost to Andy Ruiz Jr. So you wonder, why is Dillian Whyte trying to fight him? For some reason, I guess in a lot of things, the article that I was reading was saying, well, maybe because he just doesn't want to take any risk before trying to get some kind of title shot. I don't think he should get a title shot before fighting one guy. The bottom line is, they've mentioned all these people that he should probably fight, and and it's funny how when you hear these names and you don't see Louis the Real King Kong Ortiz. It's like we're looking around to fight anybody. If Dillian Whyte and Louis Ortiz announces their fight for November, it'll take over the boxing world, right? Because all the other fights we're not getting. You would think, well, the fight between, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder is the biggest. But we all know that that's probably not going to happen. It's been shenanigans the whole time. We have watched a heavyweight champion in Tyson Fury fight in the courts for 9 months not to fight Deontay Wilder. Now, some people realize what they saw and digested others differently than others. Others are acting like they didn't really see that. But we saw a heavyweight champion not try to fight a guy that's not the heavyweight champion anymore and not that good in Deontay Wilder. Let people tell it. But, he fought 9 months not to fight him, right? And then you look at what Deontay Wilder does, and everybody he's ever fought has been on the canvas, and then you kind of realize then why. Having a contract to do something, put the whole boxing world on hold. Other people can't get fights. The Alexander Usyks of the world couldn't fight Joe Joyce. They're waiting on what's going to happen with Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, and that's all we were talking about. So we saw that, right? And we just ignored it like we didn't see that. This fight, Ortiz and Dillian Whyte, would take over the boxing world. Everybody, it would be the biggest fight, but it's not for a title in a long time, and it would be the biggest fight. We keep ignoring it. I've just seen the articles talking about everyone Dillian Whyte shouldn't fight Arreola, but here are some fighters. Now, some pretty good fighters here, but Dillian Whyte versus Ortiz is pay-per-view. It stops the boxing world. Everybody stops to check that fight out. Everybody really wants to see that fight. Some people know that Ortiz is dangerous for Dillian Whyte, so they ignore it. But they know inside they want to see that. Now, the article was saying, well, here's some people that you could fight. Michael Hunter, which would be good. That's a Negro League fighter. I think Michael Hunter would be good, but it wouldn't be pay-per-view, but it would damn be a good fight. Frank Sanchez, Otto Wallen, Philip Herkovich, which is definitely a good fighter on his way up. Andy Ruiz Jr., Aslanbek Makhmudov, and Efe Ayagba. Right? Those are, what is that, about 7 names? And then you're looking at what Eddie Hearn wants him to fight is Jermaine Franklin, Cassius Chaney, and Charles Martin. That's about 9 names. Now, all those names, some few good ones in there will be good fights. But none of them as massive as Dillian Whyte versus Louis Ortiz. Now, how are we going to look at 9 fighters and look at Ortiz and ignore that fight, right? It's funny to me, man. I don't understand how that can keep happening, that we just act like we don't see this guy, Louis the Real King Kong Ortiz. The fight between Louis the Real King Kong Ortiz and Dillian Whyte is both significant and lucrative. and it just kind of needs to happen. So let's this illusion of Dillian Whyte searching for an opponent, it makes no sense. Let us all, as fans, we understand Ortiz is higher on the rankings than most of those guys we're just talking about. It's the biggest fight. We've been wanting to see it. They have history because Dillian Whyte was mandated to fight the guy. Why on earth are we ignoring that fight? Like, you know, every time it's a big fight, we ignore it. Canelo Alvarez versus Demetrius Andrade. That was a fight for undisputed. The whole boxing world ignored it. Teofimo Lopez versus Devin Haney was for undisputed. The whole boxing world ignored it and started talking about other things. And then you think it's not a huge drop off or ignorance. This is like they are trying to do this. This is actively ignoring these great fights because we don't. There's a possibility that the person that we don't want to win can win, and then they're undisputed, and we're not giving them an opportunity to do that. And this is blatant. Dillian Whyte versus Luis Ortiz is the biggest fight in heavyweight boxing other than the champions, and it should happen. And we should stop talking about anything else. Period. Doma Sports Talk worldwide, and I'm up out of here, y'all.